Look at your neighbor and tell them this: if you keep playing it safe, you'll die with your gifts still inside you. Some of you are not tired because you're working too hard. You're tired because you're afraid to step out. You keep praying for glory, but you won't touch the risk that gives birth to it. Hear me today. There is no crown without a cross, no victory without a fight. And then, O Raiska, O Ayu Jalawar, why? I came to talk to people who are standing at the edge of more. You've been comfortable, but comfort has started to suffocate you. God did not create you to survive. He created you to stand out. Every miracle you admire, every legend you celebrate, every testimony you shout about, somebody had to risk looking foolish before they look victorious. You want new levels with old habits. You want breakthrough without bravery. But I came to tell you, faith that isn't tested cannot be trusted. If you want glory, you must be willing to step into the unknown and say, if I fall forward. Today, we are breaking the chains of fear. Today, we stop negotiating with doubt. Because now reskimas now galarwa. Comfort is the most subtle enemy you will ever face because it does not attack you with pain. It seduces you with peace. It whispers, stay here, you've done enough, while destiny is calling you to rise higher. Comfort convinces you that survival is success, that routine is purpose, and that familiar ground is the same as promised land. But hear me clearly, what feels good is not always what is God, and what feels safe is often what is slowly shrinking your potential. You can be busy every day and still be moving nowhere because comfort keeps you active but not advancing. Comfort builds a house where dreams slowly suffocate. It teaches you to settle for predictable paychecks, predictable relationships, predictable prayers, and predictable results. You stop asking dangerous questions. You stop stretching your faith. You stop believing for more than what you can control. And before you realize it, you are no longer chasing vision. You are maintaining routine. Comfort doesn't tell you to quit. It just tells you not to try. It doesn't tell you to give up. It tells you to wait, to delay, to postpone obedience until tomorrow. And tomorrow quietly becomes never. Calling, on the other hand, is loud, disruptive, and demanding. Calling will interrupt your sleep, challenge your logic, and push you out of rooms where you are celebrated but not elevated. Calling requires movement, and movement always threatens comfort. That is why every great assignment begins with a command to leave the familiar, leave the known, leave the place where you have mastered survival but abandoned significance. You cannot stay where you are and become who you are meant to be at the same time. Comfort makes you confuse peace with purpose. Just because nothing is wrong does not mean everything is right. There are people living calm lives with dead dreams, stable lives with buried potential, and quiet days with loud regret waiting at the end. Comfort keeps you from the risk that unlocks the glory. It keeps you circling the mountain instead of climbing it. It keeps you applauding other people's courage while explaining your own delay. But the moment you step out of comfort, something awakens inside you. Fear shows up, yes, but so does faith. Pressure increases, but so does power. You begin to feel alive again because you were never created to be preserved. You were created to be poured out. And when you finally choose calling over comfort, you may lose convenience, but you will gain clarity, courage, and the kind of fulfillment that only comes when you dare to obey the pull of purpose over the pull of ease. Fear is a master manipulator. It never tells you the whole story. It only shows you the worst possible ending and calls it wisdom. Fear magnifies the price of the risk while hiding the value of the reward. It paints pictures of embarrassment, loss, rejection, and failure so vividly that you start protecting yourself from things that haven't even happened yet. Fear doesn't need chains or prisons. It just needs your imagination. Once it controls what you see, it controls what you do. Fear will make you overestimate what you could lose and underestimate what you could gain. It will tell you that stepping out will cost you your reputation, your security, your relationships, your peace. What it won't tell you is the cost of staying where you are. It won't show you the frustration of unrealized potential, the quiet regret of chances never taken, or the slow erosion of confidence that comes from always choosing safe over significant. Fear never puts those receipts on the table. It only talks about danger, never destiny. Fear pretends to be protection, but most of the time it is preservation without purpose. It keeps you alive, but not fulfilled. It keeps you cautious, but not courageous. It keeps you watching others walk into rooms you were called to enter. And the longer you listen to fear, the smaller your world becomes. Your dreams shrink to fit your comfort zone. Your prayers become safer. Your faith becomes theoretical instead of lived. Fear convinces you that waiting is wisdom, when in reality delay is just fear wearing a respectable mask. Fear also lies about your ability. It tells you that you are not ready, not qualified, not strong enough, not experienced enough. It reminds you of every past mistake and calls it evidence that you should not try again. But fear never mentions how much you have already survived. It never acknowledges the resilience you've built, the lessons you've learned, the strength you gained from battles that were meant to break you. Fear edits your story and removes every chapter where you overcame. The truth is, fear only shows up when something matters. Nobody is afraid of meaningless moves. Fear stands at the doorway of purpose because it knows that if you step through, you will never be the same. And here is the lie fear hates the most: being exposed. You don't have to be fearless to move forward. You just have to move anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that destiny matters more. When you confront fear with action, its voice gets quieter. When you choose obedience over comfort, fear loses its authority. And what once looked like a threat becomes the very path that leads you into growth, strength, and glory. Faith is not a feeling, and it is not a thought. It is a decision that shows up in motion. Faith that never moves is only belief sitting still, and belief sitting still never changes anything. Too many people say they have faith, but their lives are parked in the same place year after year. They are waiting to feel confident before they act, waiting to feel ready before they obey, waiting for certainty before they step out. But faith does not wait for clarity. Faith creates clarity by moving first. Movement is uncomfortable because it exposes you. When you move, you risk being seen trying. You risk being wrong. You risk discovering that the ground beneath your feet is not as solid as you hoped. That is why people prefer intention over action. Intention is safe. You can plan, talk, pray, and dream without ever challenging your fear. But the moment you move, heaven responds. Provision follows obedience. Strength shows up after the step is taken, not before. The door does not open while you stand still staring at it. Faith requires you to step before you see the full path. You don't get the entire map. You get the next instruction. You don't get all the answers. You get enough courage for the next move. And that frustrates the part of you that wants control. But faith was never about control. It was about trust. Trust that the same power that called you forward will sustain you when things get uncertain. Trust that what you don't understand will not destroy you. Movement also breaks the illusion of fear. Fear thrives in stillness because stillness gives it time to talk. When you move, fear loses its platform. Action interrupts anxiety. Obedience silences doubt. The moment you take a step, you discover that you are stronger than you thought, more capable than fear allowed you to believe. You may still feel afraid, but now fear is following you instead of leading you. Faith that moves changes you before it changes your circumstances. It builds endurance, resilience, and spiritual muscle. It teaches you how to walk through uncertainty without falling apart. Every step stretches your capacity to trust, to adapt, to rise. And even when the outcome is not what you expected, the movement was not wasted. You gained wisdom, courage, and clarity that could only come through experience. The greatest tragedy is not failing after you move. It is never moving at all. Because faith was never designed to be admired. It was designed to be exercised. And the moment you decide to move, even with trembling hands and unanswered questions, you step into a flow where growth, provision, and transformation are released. Movement turns faith from an idea into a force, and that force has the power to change everything. Failure has been misunderstood, mislabeled, and unfairly feared. We were taught to see it as a dead end, a verdict on our ability, a sign that we were never meant to succeed. But failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the process that shapes it. The real enemy is not falling. The real enemy is deciding to stay down. Quitting is what turns a setback into a sentence. Failure by itself is only information. It shows you what didn't work, what needs adjustment, and where growth is required. Every person you admire has failed more times than you can count. The difference is not talent, luck, or privilege. The difference is persistence. They refuse to let one moment define their entire story. Failure tried to introduce itself as the final chapter, but they kept writing. They learned how to fail forward, how to extract wisdom from disappointment, and how to turn pain into preparation. Success is rarely a straight line. It is a series of falls followed by the courage to stand back up. Quitting feels tempting when failure bruises your pride. It promises relief, escape, and emotional safety. But what it really delivers is regret. You may escape the pain of trying, but you inherit the pain of wondering what could have been. Quitting stops growth mid-process. It freezes you in a moment that was never meant to be permanent. Failure is temporary. Quitting makes it permanent. Failure also exposes character. It reveals whether you are committed to the outcome or devoted to the calling. When things go wrong, excuses are easy, blame is available, and retreat feels logical. But resilience is built in those moments when logic says stop and faith says stand. Failure strips away illusion and forces you to confront your discipline, your mindset, and your willingness to adapt. It humbles you, sharpens you, and prepares you for levels you could not handle without that refining fire. There is a strength that only comes from surviving disappointment. There is a confidence that only comes from knowing you can fall and still rise. As failure teaches you endurance, it trains you to trust yourself again after things don't work out. And every time you get back up, you weaken the power of fear, because fear depends on the belief that failure will destroy you. Once you realize it didn't, fear loses its grip. The truth is, failure is not fatal. It is formative. It is not proof that you should stop. It is evidence that you are in motion. Quitting ends the journey, but persistence transforms the traveler. And if you refuse to quit, failure will eventually step aside and make room for the very success it tried to convince you was impossible. Your life is speaking even when your mouth is silent. People are watching how you move, how you respond to pressure, how you face uncertainty, and how you rise after disappointment. You may think your decisions are private, but courage has a way of echoing beyond the moment. When you choose to step out despite fear, you become a living message that freedom is possible. Someone else is waiting on your obedience to find their own boldness. There are people trapped not because they lack ability, but because they lack an example. They have the dream, the talent, the desire, but they are paralyzed by doubt. When they see you take a risk, something shifts inside them. Your action challenges the limits they placed on themselves. It interrupts the narrative that says, people like us don't do things like that. Your courage becomes evidence that the ceiling they accepted was never real. Your risk has the power to break generational patterns. When you move differently, you give permission for others to imagine a different future. Families change because one person decided not to stay stuck. Communities grow because one voice refused to stay silent. Movements begin when one individual says, I will not let fear decide for me. You may never know how many people are counting on you to go first, but heaven does. Even your struggle speaks. When people see you face obstacles without giving up, they learn that difficulty is not a disqualifier. When they watch you fail and still continue, they understand that perfection is not required for progress. Your resilience gives them language for their own pain. It tells them that setbacks don't mean stop and delays don't mean denial. Your persistence becomes a roadmap for their perseverance. There is a ripple effect to obedience. One step of faith creates waves you cannot control. A decision made in private produces courage in public. A risk taken in uncertainty becomes a testimony in clarity. People draw strength from your story, not because you were fearless, but because you were faithful. They don't need to see you flawless. They need to see you forward. When you refuse to shrink, others expand. When you choose bravery, others find permission. Your life becomes a signal in a world full of hesitation. And one day, someone will step into their purpose because they saw you step into yours. They may never stand on your stage or speak your words, but they will walk in their freedom because you dared to walk in yours. That is the power of a life that chooses courage. It multiplies. Glory has never been cheap, and it has never been handed to the timid. Glory responds to those who are willing to stand when others sit, to speak when others stay silent, to move when others wait. The brave are not people without fear. They are people who decided that fear would not be their leader. Every breakthrough you admire has courage hidden behind it, because nothing great ever arrives without resistance. Bravery is costly because it demands exposure. When you step out, you put your name, your effort, and your heart on the line. You risk misunderstanding, criticism, and failure. But the cost of courage is always less than the cost of regret. Regret lingers long after fear has passed. Bravery may hurt for a moment, but it builds a life that feels true. It aligns you with who you were meant to be, not who fear tried to turn you into. Glory is attracted to pressure. Diamonds don't form in comfort, they form under weight. Muscles don't grow without resistance, they grow through strain. In the same way, purpose is forged in moments that demand courage. The brave don't avoid hard things, they face them. They don't run from challenge, they rise to meet it. And in that rising, something powerful is released. Strength you didn't know you had comes forward. Clarity replaces confusion. Confidence grows, not from success alone, but from survival. Bravery also separates spectators from participants. Many people admire glory from a distance, applauding what others have achieved while convincing themselves they could never do the same. But glory does not visit the stands. It meets those on the field. It meets the ones who are willing to get hit, to get tired, to get tested. It meets the ones who show up again after disappointment and still believe something greater is possible. The brave understand that uncertainty is not a signal to stop. It is an invitation to trust. They move without guarantees, knowing that security is often revealed only after obedience. They don't need everything to make sense before they begin. They understand that growth requires stepping into spaces where confidence is built, not assumed. Every brave act stretches capacity and deepens character. In the end, glory is not just applause or recognition. It is fulfillment. It is the quiet satisfaction of knowing you did not betray your potential. It is the peace that comes from choosing courage over convenience. The brave may stumble, they may struggle, they may suffer, but they will never wonder what might have been. Glory waits on the other side of courage, and only those willing to cross the line of fear will ever experience its fullness. So I challenge you today, don't leave this moment the same way you came in. Shake off the comfort, silence the fear, and step into the call that's been pulling on your spirit. You were not created to watch life happen. You were created to walk into it. Let today be the day you choose courage over convenience, obedience over delay, faith over fear. Stand up in your spirit and declare it with authority. I will not hide. I will not hesitate. I will not retreat. Because when you step out in faith, heaven responds. Remember this, no risk, no glory.